Wanted a short weekend project, had some spare or scrap beech, some cherry, some walnut. Saw this little box project in a fine woodworking magazine, and so I thought I'd just make a weekend project out of it. It's kind of fun. It's got some through tenons, three different kinds of woods, some rabbets, some grooves, etc. You can see how it comes apart here. It's grooved, it's rabbeted, it's got through tenons. So it's a little bit of everything. Stay tuned. I milled my parts. My sides, two of the sides were beech, two of the sides were walnut. I planed them down to 3/8 of an inch thick so that it's a fairly lightweight box. So I've got to cut 4/8 through mortises in the front and back, and I've got to cut 8 tenons in the sides. The tenons in the sides I did with just a sled on my table saw. The mortises I just did this with drilling halfway through on each side with a Forstner bit and then just chopping them out. Here I am looking for some cherry here to fit my top and bottom, and I got it out of this slab, which I cut down and also planed. I planed that down to maybe 5/16. So here's how the box kind of looks and kind of goes together. You can see the parts are all very straightforward. The lid just it's just a little less than 3/8 thick, and it sits down in a rabbet so that it is mostly down in the rabbet, but a little bit sticks out for that curved edge just to look a little nicer. You can see the front and the back have a groove in the bottom for the bottom, a rabbet in the top, and two rabbets or two dados running down the two areas where the through tenons will go, so that your seam where the walnut meets the beech, you really don't see the seam there because it's sliding down into a dado. So when the box goes together, it all fits kind of neat and clean, and most of your joints sort of cover for each other. So once I had milled all those parts, I had to cut those dados. I did that also on the sled. I just put a little stop block on my sled so that all the cuts would be uniform and the same spacing. And I just, by eye, slowly worked my way towards the 3/8 of an inch dado in the ends of both of the front and the back. Again, I just sort of snuck up on 3/8 of an inch by running the saw over and over. These dados are very, very, very shallow. I would say 3/32 probably, somewhere between a 16th and an 1/8. And just enough deep to make for a nice clean seam where the side meets the front and the back. Once I'd cut those dados, it was time to cut actually had to clean them up. When you cut, at least on my blade, when you cut dados on a table saw, it tends to leave some grooves and some high spots and some low spots. I don't have a flat ground table saw blade, so I ended up having to clean these up a little bit with a chisel, but it was super easy. They're awfully narrow. They're only 3/8 of an inch wide, and it was real easy to clean those dados out so that I would have a nice, solid, clean fit as the sides slid into the front and back. Again, this will make more sense in a second. So I just cleaned those dados out using a chisel. Probably could have used a router plane, but this worked just fine. So now I'm going to start kind of chopping out my tenons And you can see all I've done again is with a stop blocks in order to get uniform cuts. I make all 8 cuts in my 2 side pieces for one side of the tenons, then readjusted my stop block. For the other side of the tenons, there was no right and wrong. I ended up making these tenons 3/4 of an inch long, and again they're 3/8 of an inch wide, so they're twice as long as they are wide. Once I had my stop block and made all those initial cuts, the rest of the cleaning out was just a matter of running the saw over and over again to clean out the area. And again, you could do that by eye because you've got a 1/8 inch cut that you can just try to avoid. So you can just see here I'm just cleaning out the rest of the wood. Again, you don't get a real clean finish, so I had to take a chisel to these as well to clean up those chopped out parts. So I just ran all of them through, trying to clean out the parts. You can see it's a sort of a tedious over and over again kind of a process. Once I had those tenons located and sized, again you can see I haven't cleaned up the cuts yet, but once I had that, then I made marks on my front and back. Cutting from the front, again I just chopped these out with a chisel. I scribed a couple of lines as you would like if you were cutting hand cut dovetails, so I had something to guide the end of my chisel with. That's on the front and back side. Then on the insides, because you had the 3/8 of an inch wide dado, you had a guide for the edge of your chisel, and you could cut the holes out pretty squarely. So here's all the parts: front, back, sides, top, and bottom. You can see I cut grooves in the bottom and put a rabbet on the bottom so that it sat in that groove. Then at the top, once I assembled it, I used this little rabbeting bit on my router. It's got a little bearing guided bit, and I was able to just run around the perimeter of the top with the trim router and this little router bit. And so I just carefully ran my way around it. As I started doing this, it started taking, you know how sometimes you're using a router and it's noisy and it looks like it's taking out chunks instead of finely cutting. I probably should have done this in 2 different plunges, 2 different depths, but I got lucky and ended up getting the whole thing cut, not scarring up the sides or the back. So I just ran this around all 4 sides. This gave me a radiused corner at each corner, and I actually liked that because I wanted the top to have sort of a soft look. Not only did I round over the top edges, I also rounded then the corners, and I think it makes for a better looking top because it's just kind of smoother looking. Sucked up all the dust and got ready to do the final assembly. These yet were not even glued. They were just pressed together. And it came time now to actually assemble the box. Here's the top. You can see after I had rounded those corners and sized it, it fit, I would say, too snugly. And so I did a little bit of sanding and got what I think is a pretty perfect fit. Then I made a handle out of a little scrap of walnut. Just cut a little bevel on this just to kind of give it something to put your fingers on. And I just found the center of that top and super glued that on. Once I'd done that, it was time to glue up. You can see I went crazy with clamps. I just clamped the daylights out of this thing to glue it up, glued the little handle on, pulled all my clamps back off, These cam clamps are sure handy. They make for easy clamping. They're nice in that they're flat, and so you can clamp something with the clamp and then clamp the clamp to the table if you want to hold something still. And they also are actually a fun little shop project to make those. Once I'd done that, it was time to do some final sanding, some rounding over, some smoothing of edges. The thing is still not finished in this shot, but I did a little bit more sanding, kind of cleaned up the mortises and the tenons where they went through, and it made for a great little project. Thanks for watching.